who here has never heard of survival analysis? Okay, cool. And who doesn't know what a conversion rate is? Perfect. So if you raise your hand for any of those two questions, this talk is perfectly for you. We're going to go to the basics. And if there's only one thing you remember from this talk, is that conversion is a function of time, and this is how we should start treating it instead of just a snapshot. There's a question?
Yeah, let's fix the mic first.
There's a feedback.
Feedback, yeah. Man, the sensitivity it's a locker.
You can go on.
So you had time to read that slide, I think. Before working at Shopify, I worked for a mobile games company. We had about 6 teams, each working on their own game. And when the new game was ready for release, we would start first by doing a soft launch, we call it. Don't worry, there's nothing important on the slide. So the soft launch is the release on a single country where we measure the performance of the game and we evaluate it against our benchmarks. We look at things like retention, average revenue per active user, and conversion rate. The next one is important, so I'll wait until it shows, or you can look there. So when I talk about conversion rate, this is what I mean. I think this is the common thing people refer to as a simple ratio. So we say conversion rate, it should be conversion ratio. It's a way to estimate the proportion of your users that will spend. Why that is important is because it's a free-to-play game, so we make $0 from people just trying it. We need people to spend in the game. One day we had released a new game, and a week later I was making my report evaluating what levers we should change in the games and what we should improve. And I sent the report to the team, and the game had a conversion rate of 5.8% after 1 week. So that was 800 paying users over 14,000 users. You don't have to do the math, it's there. And I sent it to the team and the management. And the lead designer of the game came to me shortly after, and he really was not happy with my report. He's a Norwegian guy with a big beard and rings on his fingers. Imagine like the typical heavy metal fan. And he said, and my Norwegian accent is terrible, so I won't even try to do one. But he said that my calculation didn't apply to his game. He said that all his players were new, so it didn't work. It got me thinking, and I realized that he was probably right. 2 red flags came to my head. Is it fine? Yeah, cool. So, firstly, I could not remember a single game that at soft launch had a conversion rate that was comparable to our benchmark games. And second thing was that conversion rate was that one thing that we always managed to improve really early. We do an update, we add a promo there, and then we move it from 6% to 10%. So it was something that was not hard to increase. It was super fast. So what was happening? Well, it turns out that people are not as impulsive as we think. They don't jump on the buy button as soon as they see one. They need to get comfortable with the product before spending. And if we wanted to represent that on a graph, what would it look like? It would look like something like this. So this is the secret curve describing Knut's game. And how to interpret this graph, it's pretty simple. This is the number of days since a group of users have installed the game, and this is the proportion that I've spent. If we apply this curve to my 14,000 new users from Knut's game, this is what it would look like. First, I'll break down my users because I want to use my curve. And my curve gives me one conversion for each day. So I break down my users in 2 days. Each cohort is a group of users that have installed the game on the same date. So the top one, 8,000 people, that's the most recent cohort. They've had the game for 1 day. The second cohort, they have had the game for 2 days. Now I'm using my curve and I'm going to grab the percentages associated with each age, we'll call it, the age of the cohort. And if we just do a simple multiplication, we can see we can see the breakdown of the paying users in Knut's game. And it's pretty obvious from this point here that the 5.8% conversion rate that I calculated, the snapshot conversion rate, the common method of doing it, was actually very far from the actual potential of the game. Because fresh users dilute the conversion. And this is especially a problem if your company is on the exponential growth curve where you have a lot of new people coming in, where most of your user base is very recent. It's very difficult to evaluate the conversion just by taking a snapshot of your database and doing the simple calculation I did earlier. So Knut was right. I can't just do the simple division, but I still want to compare my games at soft launch, right? I'm working at a company, I want to get paid. So how do I do that? Well, if I had the curve of every game, it would be pretty easy to plot them both on a chart and look at which one has the highest conversion over time. So in this case, if I had Knut's game against my benchmark game, I can see that after 6 days, Knut's game is at 17% conversion, while my top performing game in my portfolio is more around 25%. So when we plot them both like this, they are on an equal footing. It's easy to see which one performs better given the same time. So how do I get this curve, this secret curve? Very lucky for us, there's already a Python library that does all the work. It's Lifelines. It was made by Cameron Davidson Pilon working at Shopify. And for getting this curve, we're going to use the Kaplan-Meier filter. The name comes from, these two guys. I couldn't get a good picture of Edward Kaplan, I'm really sorry. So, their method was a way to estimate survival time. When we run this code that I just showed you, you're going to get the curve right here, which is not the shape that I've been showing so far. And that's because they worked at evaluating how long until someone died in a medical setting. So for them, the start of the start event was someone was diagnosed, let's say, with cancer. If you read on survival analysis, a lot of things are treatment for cancer, and you compare two curves. You want to know the proportion of people are still alive after X number of years, given that they've had treatment A or just the control group. So that's why for them, it's more important to show the people that did not have the end event. So the start event is being diagnosed, end event is dying. For us, the end event is making your first purchase, and we're really interested in those people. So we're gonna flip this curve on its head, very easy. We take the complement of the survival, and we get the curve that we're interested in. I just want to precise a few things about the data that you'll need, because here I went fast. I'm using here a pandas data frame that I call users, and we're using two columns, because we need two pieces of information about each user in your database. We need a column that has converted. It's a very simple Boolean that says true if we have observed that person making a purchase. They've bought the virtual gold or the crystal, the gems, or the sword, or whatever. And false if that person has not yet made a purchase. For the duration, it's how long it took that person to make their purchase. So if someone buys on the second day, you put 2 days here. And if you've never seen that person buy, you just put the duration for how long this account has existed for. And after running your code for each of your user base, you're going to get the two curves that you want, and you're going to be able to draw conclusions from that. So in the case where this obviously is a fake example where everything is perfect and the conclusion is really obvious, it's not always the case. In a business setting, you probably don't care if the two curves are close, because you just want a ballpark estimate to say if you should work on conversion or not. But if you want to be more accurate, there are statistical tests that will tell you when curves are close, if one is actually different from the other. I'm not covering this here, but if you're interested, you can read on that. And that's a pretty simple method. Oh yeah, question?
So, why do you explain why this is a curve fitting problem? How is this different from plotting like percentages over time?
Oh, so you mean you just take your cohorts and you plot them?
Yeah, plot the, I don't know, the true fall ratio of each day.
So the advantage of using survival analysis over this one, this would work. It's obviously already better than just doing the common method. But here, the advantage is you're using all the information for everyone. So instead of saying someone, I'll go back here. I have someone here that, okay, let's pretend this guy here made a purchase on the second day. So instead of just giving us information about day 2 of a player's life, we're also getting information about day 1. The way the Kaplan-Meier method will work is we'll conclude that this person also did not convert on day 1, so they will lower the ratio on day 1. So that way we just take more information from everyone, so your confidence level will be much narrower. So if you have, depending on the size of your cohorts, if you have a lot of people installing the game every day, you can probably proceed like that. But if you want something more accurate, then you'll use survival analysis. That way everyone is taken into account for their whole lifetime. Yes?
Also possible to, rather than using that they bought, is it also possible to use, say, revenue and then do a 3-dimensional thing and have volume as a measure?
Oh, that's a good question. Mm-hmm.
You could use area under the curve as a measure for this, and then you could use volume of the shape if it's multi-dimensional.
Yeah. The problem will be how do you, because this is like as soon as they make their purchase, so you want to include that type of purchase that they made, like the amount. And that's a very good point. I'll cover a bit later about when you want to distinguish between different conversions. So I think you could do that when we have the next method, because here it's a bit naive in that a conversion is a conversion. We don't exactly know what kind of conversion it is. So the method is fairly simple, but there's if you read on it, and I'm sure I'm not going to cover all the details and intricacies of it because you can read a lot of it about it online. And most of the time you're going to read about it from the medical point of view. And when you do that, there are aspects that they don't cover or things that they do that we cannot do. And there are so 2 mistakes that I want to show you that you should avoid if you use that method at work. The first one is rounding duration. So don't do what I did in my first example. It was just simplified for the sake of the example. But in the first case, I just showed you days and it was always integers. So you might be tempted to do something like this, where you're going to use your database and you're going to query for each user how many full days have elapsed since they created their account or installed your app or signed up for your service. And when you do that, so if the person had 1.6 a day and 6 hours, it would just give you 1 for 1 day. And you're losing something when you do that. So imagine here that it's written conversions, but imagine it's a race. So I have 3 people in a race, and I'm interested to know what area in my race are dangerous, where people can trip and fall. There is a stick at the 1.7 kilometer, and I'm looking there. And I see one person jumps and continues, and another one trips and falls there. And my third runner is super slow, he's not there yet, so I don't know if this person is going to fall at the 1.7 kilometer on my wooden stick. Based on what I have right now, I can conclude that 50% of the people trip and fall on my stick, so that third user has a 50% chance of falling there. And that's the reality, that's perfect. But when you round down, so that's what it would look like. I mean, the conversion or the danger, the hazard of your race, 50% chance of falling at the 1.7 kilometer mark. And then when you round your durations down, you lose that ordering. And then you would conclude that there's a 33% chance of falling on the 1 kilometer mark, which is pretty different. The red is the estimate you'd get when you round down your durations, and the green is the actual chances of falling there. So it's very common in the medical setting that they round down to full days because for them, it's unlikely that someone dies from cancer, like two people die from cancer on the same day, so it doesn't matter. But for us, it's super important to keep the order of the event because when someone converts, they are no longer at risk or susceptible of converting after, so they should not affect the odds later. And so when you do your query, maybe you don't have data to the microsecond, go as precise as you can. That's the idea. If you have microsecond, that's perfect. And the second mistake, and it links to the question that I had, is using Kaplan-Meier when you have multiple events, multiple ways to end this. So far we only looked at you bought something, you paid, and that's what we care. That's all we care about. To explain this mistake, I'll give you an example from Shopify. So Shopify is an e-commerce platform where people sign up to create an online store, sell product, charge like credit card payments, and then run their business. So when they come to us, we give them 14 days where they can do absolutely everything for free. And at the end of the 14 days, they get an email saying you need to pick a plan if you want to continue running your business online. And so they have 3 plans they can choose from, each with a different monthly cost. And when you're working at Shopify, you might be interested in knowing when you do marketing, let's say on Facebook versus some other website, you want to quantify how much money you're making from each person you get from that ad campaign. So I had that question asked to me, and they wanted not only the conversion global, but the conversion per plan, because someone that converts at $300 is worth 10 times more than the basic plan. And the way I approached it was to use Kaplan-Meier, the first method that we saw, because in the medical literature, very often you'll see that they say survival analysis is good when there is censoring. And what they mean by censoring is you don't actually know when that person is going to die. So you just conclude at the end of the study, for however long you followed that person for is all the information that you have, and then you end it there. For us, it was with a false. And they also include people lost to follow-up, they mean, because they're going to follow people for a very long time, many years. And some people move to another city. They don't show up back to the hospital for a health check. So we don't know what happens to them. And so it's very common in that setting to just ignore anyone that leaves the study for whatever reason, to just consider them as not dead and stop their duration. So this is what I did. I had data that looked like this. So I had 3 users, and they picked different plans. And since Kaplan-Meier is only taking binary outcome, binary, I mean, only a single outcome is converted or not, I decided to proceed 1 plan at a time. So I would ignore the people taking another plan and consider them censored. And this is, I'm putting wrong just in case someone just woke up and decided to look at the slides and was going to do that at work, like don't do this. So I just replaced the actual plan they took by true or false, whether or not it was the event of interest for me. So I'm drawing a curve at a time, 1 plan at a time. Same thing for the second plan. I'm considering the one there that converted as not converted, and I end his duration. And then I plot the result, and I'm all happy, and I'm about to show this to the marketing department. Then I stop and look at it again. And it doesn't make sense. Because if you add up the curves, I have more than 100% conversion rate, which makes no sense, obviously. So, but I was all excited because, when you get some insights, you're like, wow, notice how the $300 plan converts more on the long term. It's something that we could probably think about when we reach out to people later and all that. So I went back to the drawing board, and there's actually another method that you can use when you want to work for that type of problem. That type of problem in the medical setting is called competing risks. That means when you do something, you have no chances of doing the other event. If you take the $29 plan, there's no chances you'll take the $79 plan. I mean, you could, but not as your first conversion event. When I use Kaplan-Meier and I censor things, it supposes that person could eventually convert at some point later, like we saw in the race. When in reality, that person already took a plan and will never take the $79 plan. So how do you handle multiple end events? Well, you use cumulative incidence. So we're leaving lifelines here, and we're using stats models. I'm not a big fan of stats models. So most of the things I suggest you do for survival analysis, I suggest you use lifelines, because it has a lot of other utility functions. But we don't have the cumulative incidence in lifeline. So cumulative incidence is nice because it's going to take into account people that have already ended for whatever reason before. Instead of just censoring people, we can actually tag each user with the end event that they got. So we're not giving it a converted true or false, but instead we're giving it a code for some event that interests us. And we leave the 0 for no event yet. So in this situation, you could use a code for each plan. If you have a case where you're interested in people upselling once they're subscribed, and they can also cancel their subscription, that's another case that you want to code there. Because if they cancel, they can never take the upgrade. And then we get something that's much more reasonable. When we compare them side by side, we see that not only was Kaplan-Meier overestimating the chances of conversion, but the ordering also of the plans is different. Do the one on that side. So to recap, we've seen that conversion is something that becomes more likely over time. That survival analysis can help you get an estimate how much it is at each time point. We saw to not round down durations, you want to keep the order of the conversions. To use Kaplan-Meier only for a single end event, and to use cumulative incidence when you have multiple ways to end your life or convert. That's it.